Why should we practice Wohlfahrt's Etude number 35 from his book number 2? Well, like always, when you're practicing an etude, it's important to first understand what the primary focus of the etude is. Hello to my nearly 2,000 fellow instrumentalists who already subscribe to the channel, and hi to the rest of you who haven't yet. I'm Jacques Gadway, and this is Gadway Violin. In today's episode of Why Practice Etudes, we're going to be taking a look at Wohlfahrt's Etude number 35. Like always, we're going to first take a look at the etude in its most basic form and try to discern first and foremost what the primary objective of the etude is. In other words, by learning the etude and preparing it to a performance level, what can we hope to gain, technically speaking, from practicing this etude? Well, let's start from the beginning and play it a little bit under tempo. The first thing that I like to do when I'm trying to discern what the primary focus of an etude is to assess what is difficult about the etude. Often what's difficult and what can therefore be overcome through practice is also going to be telling us what the primary objective of the etude is. Immediately taking a look at the beginning of this etude, we can see two distinctly difficult aspects. The first, and most obvious perhaps, are the quick eighth notes. We have to move our hand pretty quickly in order to accomplish these triplet eighths under the slur. While that is the most obvious part of the etude, in my opinion, it's actually not necessarily the primary focus of the etude. While the previous etudes in this book have certainly addressed some focuses in the left hand, I would say that this etude in particular is actually more about the right hand. If we notice, it doesn't only move through these fast notes under the slur, but it also continues to alternate throughout the etude between these running slurred notes and these very short quarter notes. If we play the bowing exactly as it comes, as written in the etude, starting down bow, we'll find that pretty much all of these slurred passages are going to be up bow, and all of these short quarter notes are going to start down bow and be in the lower half. The oscillation between these very different bow techniques tells me that the primary focus of this etude is actually to train us to quickly move from one technique to another. In other words, the real challenge and the primary focus of this etude is to transition from a smooth, legato, slurred bow to a short, in this case, off-the-string quarter note. These two different bowings are going to require two different techniques from the hand. During the slurs, we're going to want a very supple, soft hand. This is going to allow us to have a very smooth slur. But during the short quarter notes, we're going to completely contrast this by having very active fingers. In fact, the down bows are going to have a certain movement, and the up bows are going to have another. We're essentially going to be using a version of that collé movement. Let's take it from the beginning again, with this in mind. So, smooth bow. Additionally, each of these slurs ends with a quarter note with a dot. This tells me that we're going to essentially get into the next stroke by preceding it with a variation of it. So we're going to end these slurs with a slight collé motion in the direction of our bow. So if we start from the beginning, the end of that down bow is going to be with a slight collé. It doesn't mean we're re-articulating the down bow, right? We're not actually accenting it, but we're allowing the bow to come off slightly. Whether or not your hair actually takes off of the string is not important. What's important is that we have the energy come out of the string. On these up bows, since we're going to end in the lower half, we can go ahead and come off the string if we intend on our quarter notes being off the string as well. That being said, it's not important that we play these quarter notes off the string. What is important is that it is a contrasting bow stroke. Depending on your level, you might be doing a martelé stroke or a strictly staccato stroke. Where you're actually stopping the bow and maintaining the contact with the string. I just personally don't love this stroke. It's a great fundamental stroke to practice, but I think there's better etudes to practice it with. For example, Etude number 31, the first video in this series, we talk about using a proper staccato stroke over that etude. In this etude, I'd rather truly contrast the slur by actually coming out of the string when we're not slurred. So the real trick is getting from the slur to the beginning of the new stroke. And it's just a matter of truly conceptualizing the change in the actual feeling of the hand. When we're playing the slurs, we're going to approach the string with a very passive hand. Very passive. The fingers are not doing much at all. And then at the end, the fingers activate for a slight collé movement. But every time we start those slurs, again, very inactive hand. One thing that I think would be helpful for you to focus on when you're playing these very short quarter notes is to focus on the feeling in your ring finger and your pinky. You really want to feel like you're controlling the bow. In other words, really hold the bow. I'm not saying choke it out, but with a good bow hold, feel the contact, feel like your ring finger and especially your pinky are actually contributing to the stability of your bow hold. In doing so, be careful that your fingers aren't collapsing or becoming straight, and definitely make sure that your first finger is not hooking underneath the bow. We call this captain hook, and it usually leads to undue tension, really eliminates all of the flexibility necessary to create this nice off-the-string sound that we're looking for these quarter notes. Now, that's the primary focus of the etude. It's going to be consistent throughout. So when practicing this etude, if you focus on the quality of sound and making sure that your quarter notes contrast the slurred eighth notes, you will innately develop this benefit. So we've discovered the primary focus, we've even practiced it, but that doesn't mean our job is done. There's more to this etude. As mentioned at the top of the video, there was actually a more obviously difficult thing about it, which of course is the quickness necessary to accomplish those triplet slurred eighths. The key to succeeding in these triplet eighths is going to be making sure fingers remain down whenever possible. Let's take a look at the very beginning. There's no reason to lift the first, second, or third finger at this point, and you can maintain those contacts until necessary to lift. Finally, we lift that third finger, but we don't lift the second until now. So once again, we maintain those contact points as we place them. Another thing to think about is, if you recall from the previous etude, whenever you have a triple meter feel, or in this case, we have both a triple meter feel with triplet eighths, it's important to understand where your emphasis, or in other words, your strong beat, lies. We should feel our strong beats not only in the bow, but also in the left hand. One of the ways that we can conceptualize this is by feeling a slightly greater weight on our strong beats, literally by placing the finger with a little bit more force. So that third finger is going to be a little bit heavier than the rest. That second finger is going to be a little bit heavier. Another way of thinking of that second finger as being heavier, since it's already down, is to think about lifting the third finger with more energy. We're lifting that third finger with a little bit more energy to help us feel the bigger beat. When things are all said and done, maybe your listener will not hear the emphasis. In fact, we might not even want the listener to hear it. But it's very important for us to know how we're grouping things and understanding what our strong beats are, because this is how we create good, consistent coordination and rhythm. which run you're doing, you should always make sure that you know where your strong beats are and how you're going to conceptualize them. Additionally, try to always focus on which fingers you can maintain contact with the string. The less individual movements you need to do, the faster and more freely you can play. I want to jump to the end of the etude to show one of the more tricky parts. This part is really challenging, particularly because of how clustered the fingering ends up being. We're going to take a look at this measure right here, which in this edition that I'm looking at right now is the second to last measure of the second to last line. We're in third position here on a C natural. And these runs are very challenging because everything gets really close together. First finger, second finger, and third finger are all going to be touching. It's very clustered and it can lead to undue tension. So there's two ways to play this. We can either feel like our position is higher than a normal third position, where we have our double contact, our thumb, across from the D sharp, and then feel like our third finger is compressed down. Or we can play in a normal third position, where our thumb is across from where our first finger D natural would be, and then feel like both our first finger is sharp and our third finger is low in this position. For me, this is the most comfortable, but that doesn't mean it's the best option for you. I would encourage you to experiment with what position or what variation of position works the best for you in this run. One final thought to think about when you're practicing this is to be careful of rushing those triplets, especially when you have 3 descending in a row. If we look at this last system, this pattern can end up feeling like one gesture in and of itself, and sometimes we lose the consistency of the rhythm. We still want to feel like each of those eighth notes are even, rhythmically speaking. That's going to be it for this etude. It's a really great one to practice if you're struggling with quick changes in your bow texture. If there's another etude or violin concept you'd love me to go over in the future, please leave it in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and please subscribe so you don't miss a future video. And like always, happy practicing.